Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Ask Shane Anything, the post-Christmas edition. Today is the day after Christmas. Hope that you guys got everything that you wanted. I know right now you're probably counting your bounty, looking at all your gifts that you got, counting all your gift cards, trying to figure out where you're going to spend all that stuff. Hope you got everything that you wanted. I had a great Christmas, I'm sure, even though I'm recording this before Christmas, because I know I've been around family, and that's really what matters to me. Hope you had the chance to do that as well. We're getting back into the groove here a little bit, going back into some game-related questions for this week's episode. Let's get to the questions. First up, on our pre-New Year's episode of Ask Shane, the question comes from Gregor G. After the latest Star Wars Outlaws, I thought that stealth games were a thing of the past, but after playing Indiana Jones and The Great Circle, I feel like I still like the genre. How would you compare the two games? What can Ubisoft learn from Indiana Jones? Well, Gregor, I think everyone's big complaint with Star Wars Outlaws wasn't that it had stealth in it. It was how the stealth was handled. So I think everyone's big complaint was there were a lot of sections in Outlaws where if you failed a stealth section, it was just over. And you just had to start it all over. And I think for me personally, I began to kind of figure out that there was one way to kind of go through, not every, but a lot of the stealth sections in Outlaws. It felt like there was one predetermined path that they were trying to make you use trial and error to figure out. And I don't think that's a great way to do stealth. I think the best way to do stealth is when it's a lot more open-ended. Now, one of the big differences for me between Indiana Jones and Star Wars Outlaws is the use of items for distraction. And that's another thing, too, I would say about good stealth games, is they have some element to them that's beyond just sneaking around. Now, to be fair, Kay used her little critter as her distraction technique, but it was like the same every time. Like, you'd send him over, he'd dance around or roll around in front of the enemy would get distracted, you'd come in and, like, take the enemy out. In these other games, like Splinter Cell, it was about shooting out the lights and creating darkness that you could then use to create pathways to sneak around. And in Indiana Jones, it's like you can pick up anything in the game. And there are just so many objects and use them in a variety of ways to distract enemies. And I just feel like it creates a more open-ended experience where players can fiddle around and experiment and actually be rewarded for it. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about stealth is when you look at it, you're like, can I do that? Probably not. But I'll try it. And then you try it and it works. That's when stealth to me is truly magical. And again, I do think having some unique elements, unlike other stealth games, helps as well. We just saw that game Thick as Thieves. Warren Spector's new game was just debuted at the Game Awards, and that's like a multiplayer stealth game, which reminds me a little bit of the multiplayer modes from Assassin's Creed back in the day, which I really liked, but didn't really end up living over the long term. So I feel like if you find something unique, that's one thing that can help players kind of be like, oh, this is different at least. And I can fiddle around with this and still have fun with it, even if it's not perfect. But honestly, Star Wars Outlaws was just like the most generic, rigid form of stealth that there is. And I understand kind of why Ubisoft did it that way, because look, you have this license, you want to focus on the characters of the license, you want her little critter to go out there and roll around so that you care and you buy the plushie and all. There's all this stuff that goes into the psychology of it all. But ultimately, if you're just talking about stealth mechanics, it needs to be open-ended so you can fiddle around with it, have fun, and ultimately complete the missions. All right, our next question comes from Fruit Eater, and oddly enough, it's about eating. What are your favorite snacks? What's the best snack while gaming if you partake? Well, the first rule about gaming snacks is that they cannot stick to your fingers. That's rule number one. So that gets rid of like chips and Cheetos and all that kind of stuff. Look, I get some of you guys are still going to eat the Cheetos. You're still going to use the controller. You're still going to grind the orange dust into the buttons of your controller and ruin your controller. You're still going to do it. I'm just telling you it's a bad idea and you should steer clear. Personally, my favorite snacks are graham crackers. I don't know why I love graham crackers, because they're not like overly sweet, but they're like just sweet enough. It's like they have a taste of honey to them. So I don't feel like they're that bad for me to eat, even though they're carbs or whatever. And they don't make a mess. Like they make some crumbs here or there, but not really. Like you can eat graham crackers, you can snap them off into the exact size that you want. Like They are a great snack. I love them. And then another snack that I have all the time is cereal. I eat like a healthy cereal in the morning, and then for a snack at night, I will eat like a sugary cereal, like a Cap'n Crunch or Honeycomb, or I like them all pretty much. It's one of my vices. I need to learn to not eat that bowl of cereal at night. But anyway, I have continued to. So another favorite snack for me is cereal. And sometimes I'll even eat cereal without milk. I'll just eat the cereal by itself. But again, if I do that, I make sure that it's not leaving any like residue on my fingers so I can eat real quick. And then the match starts and I get my hand back on the controller. I'm not going to have any issues with my hand slipping or, as I said earlier, ruining my controller. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the cleanliness of the snack. So those are my favorites. And I also like, as far as healthy snacks, I like grapes. I'm a big fan of these grapes called Concord grapes. They're these grapes that the actual flavor grape is based on, but nobody ever gets to eat them because they're in for season for a very short period of time. They are delicious. You don't actually eat the whole grape. You squeeze them and you just eat the inside that comes out when you squeeze it, and then you throw the skin away. They're amazing, but they're very hard to find. In fact, we can hardly ever find them in California, if you can believe that, with all the wineries here. We can never find them here. My wife found them in Pennsylvania and brought them back with her, and that's the last time I had Concord grapes. So stuff like that's good because your fingers may be wet, but they're not really dirty. They don't have powder on them or whatever, so that's also a good snack fruit, I think. But yeah, I would say that's probably the breadth of the snacks that I eat. I don't eat like cookies, really, unless you count graham crackers. I don't eat like cake and stuff like that really that often. I don't really have a sweet tooth per se. So yeah, I guess those are my favorite snacks. Okay, our last question for this episode comes from the one and only Buckby. What are your thoughts on game publishers avoiding Grand Theft Auto 6 and refusing to announce release dates for their games? Am I being overly optimistic in thinking maybe the companies realize it's dumb to cannibalize each other? Or do they just know for certain that this particular fight is one they can't win? Do you think GTA 6 is the exception, and otherwise publishers will continue to release their games on top of each other? Bachby, I think that last statement is the right one. I think GTA 6 is an anomaly. It's a one-off thing. And yes, I think they will continue to be stupid and release games on top of each other. 2025 is loaded with games. Now, we've talked about on Game Face about kind of what you're saying. Like, a lot of publishers haven't announced release dates for games that are coming out in 2025 because they're waiting to see if Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to come out in September, October, November, December. Here's the thing, though. It doesn't freaking matter. It doesn't matter. Grand Theft Auto 6, once it is finally released, is going to sell every month. It's going to be the best-selling game for months and months. You're not going to be able to avoid it. Sure, that first month it's going to sell 20 million or something, 30 million maybe. But I guarantee you after that, every month it's going to be another 5 million, 8 million, and then maybe 10 million if they put out some DLC or something that people are excited about. And it's just going to continue for months and months and months. There's no good way to avoid GTA 6 other than releasing your game before the fall of next year. And then you get in under the gun, but once GTA 6 is out there, you might as well just release your game whenever you think is best for the game and best for you fiscally, because you just got to ignore GTA 6 at that point. It is going to be skimming off the top of the industry for the next 10 years, just like the last one did. It may be 15 or 20 years. I may never play another Grand Theft Auto game after Grand Theft Auto 6. At my age, if it takes them another 13 years to make another one, I may never play another GTA. So this game is going to keep on selling. When people buy a console for the next 5 years after it's out, one of the first games they're going to buy is GTA 6. That's just the way it's going to be. These publishers can try to be strategic, and I think they're doing this in large part to convince their stockholders that they're being responsible and they're not just being rash and haphazard. It doesn't matter. GTA 6 is going to be a juggernaut for months and months. Even if it comes out and it gets like a 7 or something like that, it's not going to matter. People love GTA. It has been so long since the last one. It is going to sell like hotcakes, and it is going to hurt the rest of the industry for probably years to come. So I know what they're doing. They're just trying to say, hey, we know this is coming. We don't want to get to a point where our game tanks and then have our shareholders freak out because we didn't have a strategy around GTA 6. They're just covering their asses, basically, but honestly, their asses are all about to get whipped. Okay, that's it for this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything. This is the last episode of this before I actually come back to LA, and we start doing live episodes of this again. So, I'm going to ask you to go to SIFTD.net, click on that link in the header there, go to our forums, and start asking me some questions. Nobody asked me for my predictions for 2025. I was kind of surprised about that. Even though I asked for questions specifically for the holidays and said I needed them for these shows, nobody asked for my predictions. So maybe that's something somebody might want to ask in the next round of questions for Ask Shane Anything. Thanks again for another great year. Thanks to all you who pledge at $7 or more per month all year. That's why this show keeps going. Head to patreon.com/sifted and help us out if you can. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd appreciate it very, very much. So happy New Year. Be safe. Take an Uber, take a cab, do not drink and drive, and we'll see you in 2025.